Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 45 of B-Road Ballers, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of hot hatches. And some vehicles within the hot hatch category kind of toe the line very closely between hot hatch and also what could be kind of considered a coupe. And this was one of the first occasions in the most recent years of hot hatches that occurred. It is the Volkswagen Scirocco. Now this car is of course a return to a legendary name from Volkswagen. The Scirocco of course was a classic coupe with a hatchback. They brought it back, modernised the design, and it sold well. It's a very good looking car, it stands out from the crowd, it's pretty unique to look at. And this version in particular offers an interesting twist on the hot hatch package from Volkswagen compared to their leading hot hatch, the Golf. Now this car shares the exact same engine as the Golf R on the game. So it's a 2-litre turbo, it produces 484 horsepower, which is the exact same as the Golf R, the exact same amount of torque at 388 foot-pounds, and so you'd probably expect it to be basically just the same car with a different shape. That's actually not the case at all, for one very specific reason. The Golf is all-wheel drive. The Scirocco, interestingly, is not. It's front-wheel drive. Now personally, I prefer having all-wheel drive on a hot hatch if it's an option, because that extra control and all-weather ability, in real life especially, is just a nice addition to have. Front-wheel drive hatches though, as we've mentioned before, have some very distinct advantages, and you can actually notice them very early on, even just in its on-paper spec, in the case of the Scirocco compared to what is arguably its main rival, the Golf R. So how do they compare? Well, you've got the same torque, same power, as we mentioned, but the fact that it's front-wheel drive, as well as a couple of other things, but that primarily means that this is a significantly lighter car than the Golf R. It weighs around 80 kilos less at 1155 kilos, and as far as the horsepower per tonne, it puts out significantly more than the Golf R at 419 horsepower per tonne. Now as far as the PP, it's also a little bit higher. The Golf R sits at 539, this car sits at 542. So the indication as far as the game is concerned is that this is potentially a better performance car. That's also mirrored in the price. This is more expensive than the Golf by pretty much $1,000. So at 51 grand, it's reasonably expensive for a hot hatch, but far from being the most expensive of hot hatches. So the question is, how does it compare? Because being essentially the same car, but with front-wheel drive instead of all-wheel drive, what kind of difference does that make in its real-world racing application? Real-world, of course, referring to in the game. Well, it offers completely different handling, as you'd expect. The all-wheel drive on the Golf makes it quicker off the line, and also a much, much superior rally vehicle. But the Scirocco, having not just less weight, but also the advantage in control and throwability through corners from the front-wheel drive, means that although they both definitely have distinct advantages, and overall I personally do prefer the Golf for the all-wheel drive, the Scirocco is not to be downplayed. It has some definite advantages over the Golf, and in certain circumstances it is quicker. Around tracks where you really need that high corner-to-corner flow, without really stamping on the brakes and worrying about the car losing control, potentially, the front-wheel drive aspect of this vehicle really comes into play. Tracks like the Nürburgring really allow you to exploit that front-wheel drive advantage over the Golf. Now the Golf, as I said, will absolutely wipe the floor with this car if you take it on a dirt track or on a track which requires quicker speeds off the line, such as a drag race. So they both pretty much break even compared to each other. In terms of the broader scheme of things, how it compares to other hot hatches in general, I would say the Scirocco compares very well. Although I'm not a huge fan of the car personally, I do think it's a good looking car, I just prefer others overall. It's a very strong hot hatch to go for. It's stylish, it's fast, it's relatively lightweight, not overly light, but certainly not too heavy, and as far as the price, it does cost a little bit more than some, but it's still not breaking the bank. Now, as far as when I would recommend using it, as I said, technical circuits, tracks which require that higher average speed and more control, basically the same kind of tracks which would be good for the Megane RS and the newer Megane, the Clio RS, those kind of vehicles which have that real chuckability factor. In terms of straight line performance, we already said it's not as quick off the line as the Golf R, but for top speed, they're pretty much equal. The Scirocco may even be a little bit quicker top end due to the fact that you've got less rolling resistance from a front wheel drive car, and that especially mid-range and also to some degree top end acceleration does tend to kick in quicker, and it's also lighter and has a slightly more advantageous aerodynamic profile. So for top end performance, I'd actually probably put my money on the Scirocco in a race, but off the line of course the Golf would be the clear winner. Overall, it basically is just a choice of what you want if you want to pick from one of the two. Overall though, the Scirocco against other hot hatches in the broader sense is a very strong car to go for. It's dependable, it's fast, and it's fun. And if you really want to have some fun with this car, try putting racing softs on the front and comfort softs on the back. Thank me later for that one. But overall, that's it for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.